The sun bled across the West Texas sky, casting long, jagged shadows across the dry scrubland. Cole Harrow wiped his brow with a dust-slick sleeve as he leaned against the warped rail of the Abilene trading post, boots rooted in cracked earth. The sun didn't bother him. He was used to hard weather, hard land. What gnawed at him was something deeper, emptiness. The Harrow Ranch had been his family for 3 generations, but bloodlines meant little to a dying farm. Cattle had grown thin. Grass wouldn't grow where rain never came. His last 2 ranch hands had packed up for El Paso, and the well had gone sour again. Cole was 37, and wore every year of it across his weathered face. His jaw stayed clenched even in sleep. His fingers ached, and the silence that filled his land felt like a living thing. That silence broke with the clatter of wheels on dirt. He turned as a sheriff's wagon pulled into town, dust curling behind it like smoke. Folks gathered fast. Traders' wives, ranchers with nothing better to do. Cole moved slow, keeping his hat low, curiosity tugging him forward. The girl on the wagon bed stood barefoot, her arms bound at the wrists. Her shirt was torn at the shoulder, her trousers stained and too large. Her black hair hung in wild knots, and her green eyes stared down the crowd like she had nothing left to lose. A sun-cracked board hung from her neck, scrawled in black. Too wild, unmarriable, unmanageable. She's feral, the deputy barked, caught trying to steal a mare 2 towns over. No kin, no papers. She'll be sent to the women's work camp unless someone steps forward. She bit the last man who touched her, someone said with a nervous laugh. Cole said nothing. He just watched. Most girls would have looked scared. She didn't. She looked like she'd walked through hell, and didn't care if she walked through more. Her silence wasn't fear. It was fire, steady and unreadable. And that fire hit something raw in Cole. "How much?" he said. The deputy turned. "You serious? I'll take her. She ain't a dog, rancher. She's a problem." "I've got plenty of problems," Cole muttered, digging into his coat. He slapped down 2 silver coins. The deputy glanced at the sheriff, who shrugged. "She's yours." They unbound her and handed her off like excess freight. She didn't say thank you. She didn't say anything. She followed Cole without a word, like a shadow made of wind and will. Back at the ranch, she didn't go inside. Just sat on the porch, back against the wall, knees to her chest, watching the stars bleed across the sky. Cole left food and water near her and said nothing. She didn't touch it that night. But when he stepped out the next morning, the plate was empty. She was gone. Panic surged in his chest. But when he rounded the barn, he stopped dead. There she was in the corral, barefoot and silent, astride the wildest Mustang Cole owned, the same one that had broken 2 grown men's collarbones. She had no reins, no saddle. Her legs gripped the horse's flanks like she was carved to ride. And the beast, usually fire-eyed and violent, was calm beneath her. She didn't see him watching. She was whispering to the animal in some language he didn't know, barely louder than the breeze. When she finally slid down, she didn't run. She turned and met his eyes. "Name Sienna," she said. It was the first word she ever spoke to him. She never asked for favors, never questioned orders. But Cole noticed she didn't follow orders either. She followed instinct. She mended fences before being told, saddled his horse before he reached the barn, skinned a rattler that nearly bit his dog without flinching. And yet she didn't trust people. Not easily. When he handed her his old coat for the cold nights, she took it only when he walked away. When he offered her the spare bed, she shook her head and curled up by the fireplace instead. She was like a wind-blown flame, too much breath, and she'd vanish. Too little, and she'd burn you alive. He started talking to her more. Not much, just little things. "You ever fixed fencing before?" She nodded. "You do it better than most men I've hired." She didn't smile, but her eyes flicked up. That was enough. Then came the night of the storm. Thunder shook the windows. The roof leaked like a sieve. Cole was patching it with a tarp when the barn door slammed open. The foal, the little bay mare, had been sick for days. He ran outside and found Sienna already knee-deep in mud, trying to drag the trembling foal to shelter. Lightning flashed. Rain sliced through the night like glass. "You'll catch your death," he shouted. She didn't even glance back. "Then help me or get out of the way." He did help. They both collapsed, soaked and shivering, on the barn floor beside the weak foal. She wrapped it in a blanket and curled around it like a mother wolf. He watched her until the trembling stopped. His, not the foal's. Back inside, he gave her dry clothes, and she finally sat on the edge of the bed, dripping, too tired to fight. "You still think I'm too wild?" she asked, voice cracking. He looked at her, really looked, her scarred knuckles, her hollow cheeks, her eyes that still hadn't learned how to ask for softness. "No," he said, "I think you're exactly what this place needed." After that night, the cold between them began to melt. She started asking questions. Where he was born, why he never married, why he kept a broken watch on the mantel. He told her everything, even about his brother who'd vanished during the war, even about the woman who left him because the land mattered more than her. "I never trusted many people," he admitted. "Me neither," she said. "People want to own what they don't understand." She said it like she was remembering something she couldn't forget. That winter, they worked side by side, hauling hay, nursing sick cows, fixing the well pump by lantern light. She slept in the cabin now, though she still curled near the fire. And he found himself looking for excuses to sit close, to hand her coffee, to touch her shoulder when passing. It was 1 dusk when he finally said it. "Sienna," he said, saddling 2 horses. "Ride with me?" She hesitated. "Why?" "Because I want to show you something." They rode up the ridge, where the world unfolded like a map painted in dust and gold. They dismounted. Wind tugged her hair across her face. "When you came here," he said, "I was drowning, and I thought you'd be the storm that finished me." She didn't speak. "But you weren't. You were the reason I kept breathing." She turned to him slowly. "When I was sold, I swore I'd never belong to another man, never be touched, never depend. You don't belong to me," he said softly, "but I'd be honored to belong to you." For the first time, her hand found his. She didn't kiss him. She didn't cry. She just stayed. And for a girl who had run from every fence ever built around her heart, that meant more than any vow. They rode back in silence. Only now it didn't feel empty. It felt full. Spring crept into West Texas slow and silent, like a stranger testing the door. The ground softened, trees budded tentative green, and for the first time in years, the Harrow Ranch breathed easy. Cattle fattened. The well held. Foals were born under starlit skies, and laughter, rare, low, and rough, returned to Cole Harrow's throat. Sienna still rose before the sun. She still said little. But now, she wore a scrap of ribbon in her hair. Now, she left a cup of coffee waiting for him some mornings. And sometimes, when the sky turned red at dusk, she would lean into his shoulder while they watched the horses graze. The silence between them had changed. It was no longer heavy with what they didn't know, but warm with all they didn't need to say. They had built something rare, and they both knew rare things never stayed untouched for long. It began with tracks. Strange hoofprints by the southern fence line, too wide to be ranch stock, too deep to be harmless. Then came the broken gate, the missing chickens, boot prints where no boots should have been. Cole rode out for answers, jaw tight, rifle strapped across his back. When he came home to find Sienna standing still as stone on the porch, eyes fixed on something in the distance, his stomach knotted. "They're here," she said softly. He didn't need to ask who. That night, she told him. "I wasn't caught stealing a horse, Cole. I was running." From who? From him. And then, slowly, with words like knives, she told the story. She'd been sold at 15 to a trader named Wyatt Harlan, a cruel man who trafficked in women the law had given up on, girls without papers, without kin. He kept them on a remote compound south of the Pecos River, beat them into silence, starved them into obedience. She escaped only after stabbing one of his men with a fire poker and stealing a mare into the night. "I rode for days," she said. "No food, no water. I don't know how I made it." Cole sat beside her, fists clenched. "You think it's him?" he asked. "I know it is." He stood slowly across the room and took his rifle off the wall. "I'll handle it." But Sienna grabbed his arm. "You don't know men like him, Cole. They don't come alone. He won't knock on the door and ask politely. He'll wait. He'll burn the barn, poison the well. He'll tear this place apart just to see me crawl." "Then let him try," Cole growled, "but he'll never touch you again." That night, she didn't sleep. She stood by the window with her knife in her hand, eyes on the tree line. 2 days passed. Then came the fire. It started just before midnight, smoke rising behind the cattle barn. Cole bolted upright. By the time he and Sienna reached it, the rear stalls were blazing, orange eating through the wood like hungry teeth. The foals! Sienna cried. She ran in before he could stop her. Cole followed, smoke burning his throat. Flames licked the rafters. Screaming horses kicked at the stalls. Together, they freed them, one by one. Sienna coughing, eyes watering, leading the last mare out just as the roof collapsed. They fell to the ground, gasping. That's when Cole saw the symbol painted on the barn wall in ash. A circle with 3 hash marks. Sienna turned pale. "It's him. That's his mark." Cole stared at the horizon. "Then we bring the fight to him." The next morning, Cole rode into town, found a wire office, and sent a message to a name he hadn't spoken in 10 years. Elias Harrow, his brother, a bounty hunter. They hadn't spoken since the war, but blood was blood. Elias arrived 3 days later, all leather, grit, and loaded revolvers. "She yours?" he asked, nodding toward Sienna. Cole didn't answer, just said, "We're going south." They tracked Harlan through ravines and canyons, through outlaw towns where lawmen looked the other way. In every saloon, they found fear in the barkeep's eyes at the sound of his name. "He's running girls again," Elias said. "You sure about this?" Cole looked at Sienna across the firelight, her face tight with pain and memory. "I've never been more sure." They found the compound at dusk on the 4th day, deep in a dried-out riverbed, half buried in mesquite, makeshift tents, armed guards, a pen full of frightened women. Cole didn't wait. The fight was brutal. Gun smoke thick in the air. Elias took a bullet to the shoulder. Cole took one to the thigh, but kept moving. Sienna found Harlan inside his tent, halfway through a bottle, grinning like the devil who thought he'd already won. "You'll crawl back," he slurred. "They always do." But this time, she didn't run. She stood tall. "I'm not that girl anymore." And she pulled the trigger. The gunshot echoed into the hills. By dawn, it was over. They freed the girls, burned the tents, rode home slow and quiet, dust in their mouths, blood on their sleeves. Back at the ranch, Cole sat on the porch with his leg bandaged and Sienna beside him, silent for a long time. "You don't have to stay," he said softly. "Not after all this." She looked at him, fierce and clear-eyed. "I didn't stay because I had to, Cole. I stayed because this is the first place I ever felt human." He reached for her hand. "You're not too wild," he said. "You're just free." And for once, the wind didn't whisper warnings. It carried the quiet promise of a new beginning.